All right, let's jump right into it. Welcome to this explainer. Today, we are going to explore a really fascinating subject. We're diving deep into the 19th century Philippines to uncover the world that shaped one of its most prominent figures, Dr. Jose Rizal. We're going to unpack the historical context, the massive global shifts, and the local realities that created the absolute perfect environment for Rizal's revolutionary ideas to take root. So get ready to travel back in time with me.
Here's the big question I want you to keep in the back of your mind as we go through this explainer. Before we study Rizal, shouldn't we first understand the exact world he grew up in? It's super tempting to look at historical figures as these lone geniuses who just suddenly woke up one day with a bunch of brilliant ideas. But historical figures don't exist in a vacuum. A person's ideas are deeply, deeply influenced by their time, their place, the people around them, and the specific historical conditions they lived through. By really understanding the 19th century, we essentially unlock our understanding of Rizal himself.
Here is our roadmap for today. We'll cover 1. The changing world. 2. Philippine economic shifts. 3. Political and social turmoil. 4. Rise of the Ilustrados. 5. Rizal in context. And finally, 6. The big connection.
Okay, starting with Section 1, the changing world, Europe and Spain in the 19th century. So, the late 18th and early 19th centuries were completely defined by the Industrial Revolution, which was being spearheaded by Britain. Through the invention of steam engines and massive new machinery, Britain was experiencing incredibly rapid development and urbanization. But Spain? Well, Spain was falling way, way behind. Why? Because they were totally caught up in the Napoleonic and Carlist Wars, and they were essentially paralyzed by these really intense internal power struggles between liberal and conservative factions. And this sets up a crucial domino effect. What happens globally inevitably trickles down locally. The rapid economic development of their European neighbors basically made Spanish administrators realize, hey, we cannot afford to get left behind here. So changing events in Europe forced Spain to completely rethink its policies, and those changes in Spain directly resulted in changes within its colonies, including the Philippines.
That leads us right into Section 2, Philippine economic shifts, opening to the world trade.
First, there was this brief occupation of Manila by British forces between 1762 and 1764. And man, this was a massive wake-up call for Spain. To prevent something like this from happening again and to even try to catch up with Europe, they had to modernize, fast. So a major reform hit in 1830. The traditional galleon trade was abolished, and the Philippines was finally opened up to world trade.
Now, what followed this opening wasn't just a simple economic boom. Yes, for sure, we saw a massive growth in economic activity and the entry of foreign European firms. The end of wars and slave raiding also meant that new agricultural frontiers were being developed across the Philippines. But honestly, the most important part? Opening the economy meant opening the borders to foreign ideas. Books and printed media from abroad just flooded in. People in the Philippines were suddenly reading about the French Revolution and authors like Alexander Dumas. It was a huge intellectual shift.
But here is the absolutely crucial point. This economic boom did not benefit everyone equally. The local elites, the principalias and mestizos, capitalized heavily on these agricultural developments, creating a very wealthy local elite class. Meanwhile, the marginalized, poorer sectors were left dealing with this rapidly widening gap of inequality. Wealth was concentrating right at the top, and this stark contrast set the perfect stage for some major social friction.
Which brings us to Section 3, Political and Social Turmoil, Demanding Reforms and Equality.
A really big catalyst for this tension actually came directly from Spain itself. The 1812 Cadiz Constitution provided a brief but incredibly powerful legal justification for equality. It explicitly stated that all citizens of Spain, including those in its colonies, were equal under the law. Even though this constitution was brief, it planted a major seed. It proved to Filipinos that liberal policies and equal rights weren't just pipe dreams, they were documented possibilities.
So, this growing desire for equality, mixed with the anger over those huge economic gaps, led to a highly, highly tense atmosphere. We saw the Basya revolts, which were directed against both Spanish authorities and local elites. Down in southern Tagalog, brigandage increased so much that they actually had to create the Guardia Civil in 1868 to deal with it. You had movements like the Cofradia de San Jose actively challenging the Catholic Church's dominance, and crucially, native secular priests like Padre Jose Burgos began aggressively fighting for equal rights among the clergy.
All of this unrest built up to a major breaking point, the year 1872.
The Spanish administrators essentially interpreted this widespread push for equal rights, especially from the secular priests and students, as a direct attempt to overthrow the government. This paranoia led to a massive crackdown, which culminated in the execution of the priests Burgos, Zamora, and Gomez. This single year and this deeply tragic event poured gasoline on the nationalistic anger of the era.
Now let's look at Section 4, Rise of the Ilustrados, the Power of Education. Let's clearly define a vital term you are going to hear all the time, Ilustrados. This simply refers to the educated Filipinos of this era. Remember those elite families who gained all that wealth from the economic shifts we just talked about? Well, they used that wealth to send their kids to take professional courses, not just in the Philippines, but all across Europe. These educated individuals became the absolute core of a brand new, emerging movement demanding real reforms from the colonial government. And the opening of the Suez Canal in 1869? A total game changer. It was basically the 19th century equivalent of high-speed internet. It drastically shortened the travel time between the Philippines and Europe, making it so much easier for these students to go abroad, study, and experience the wider world firsthand.
So let's trace how this all builds, because it's a very clear pipeline. Increased local wealth allowed for education. The Suez Canal allowed for easier travel. That travel brought intense exposure to new ideas. This combination naturally birthed the Ilustrados, who then went on to form the reform and propaganda movement. This wasn't just another localized revolt, right? It was a highly organized, educated movement with a nationalistic dimension, completely fueled by the discrimination they faced at home and the liberal ideas they were reading about abroad.
Which perfectly sets up Section 5, Rizal in Context, a product of his time. Jose Rizal was born in 1861, right smack in the middle of this political and economic turmoil. His family belonged to that local elite in Laguna, gaining their wealth from leasing friar estates. That specific wealth is exactly what allowed him to access the era's educational reforms in the 1870s. By the 1880s, like many other Ilustrados, he traveled to Europe for his studies. And eventually, in 1892, he returns to establish La Liga Filipina. He is the ultimate textbook product of these specific historical shifts.
But I want to emphasize a really important point here. Rizal did not just become a nationalist overnight because of one single historical event. It doesn't work like that. His consciousness was deeply, gradually shaped by his travels. Being outside the country exposed him to totally different political systems and scholars. It actually made him realize how incredibly low the global awareness of Filipino identity was, which is exactly what sparked his push for Philippine studies. His brilliant ideas were a steady evolution, fueled by exposure, top-tier education, and the shifting historical conditions of his time.
Finally, Section 6, The Big Connection. Why historical context matters.
Let's bring all the pieces of our funnel together. 19th century global changes directly forced Philippine economic and political shifts. Those local shifts created the wealth that allowed for the rise of educated Filipinos. And being part of that educated, well-traveled class is exactly what paved the way for Rizal's developing consciousness. It's one giant, fascinating chain reaction.
So, I'm going to leave you with this final thought to ponder as you continue your studies this semester. Can we truly understand a person's ideas without understanding the time and the place that shaped them? As we've seen today, to truly know Jose Rizal, you absolutely must know the 19th century. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep asking those great questions, and I will see you next time.